Charlie's on, see that?
Yeah.
There he is.
Charlie, yeah.
Being sent to a third party. I guess, got it, you got it.
Okay, yeah.
Got it, Penny. Something like that, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, and then they'll be able to ask questions.
Yeah.
4
2
minutes.
minutes. Want me to turn on the AC?
Yeah, maybe let me see.
We have to mute ourselves.
No, because you'll be able to ask questions as we go. Let me just make sure that you will be able to see that. All right. So hopefully all of that is going to work. So we will begin in 1 minute. Somebody can chat amongst yourselves.
I think this is too loud.
No, it's as unfortunately as loud as we can make it.
No, they can see you.
That's,
On the screen.
does it say Robin and Shana?
That's the.
No, and Shar.
It's David and
Judy.
Bonnie.
Mhm. Judith Estevez. Got my water.
45 more seconds and we shall begin.
Countdown, yay.
Does this go to the main screen then? You can't hear me.
I can hear you. I don't understand the question.
Okay, you're in the little box with all the rest of the people looking on, and the
Right,
main.
most of this is going to be the PowerPoint presentation. So you'll just kind of hear us give an overdub as we see the pictures.
Okay, you can say hello, because.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, her picture is on, but she's hooked in.
Okay, we are going to begin. Thank you all for coming tonight and giving us this opportunity to share with you about the March of the Living. You should be able to see me on the corner, upper right corner of your screen, see the two of us, but most of the time we're going to be looking at pictures. Just a really quick overview. The March of the Living began in 1988 at the instigation of members of the Israeli leadership. And they had about 1,500 kids and their teachers who came primarily from Israel, the United States, and from France, although a few kids came from elsewhere as well. And eventually it continued on as a yearly activity, except for the COVID years of 2020 and 2021, when they did something virtual, but they were not able to have it in real life. And in that time of the last 36 years that March of the Living has been going on, it has attracted 300,000 people. The year that Bonnie and I went this year had about 6,000, but normally they would have about 10,000 people who would have participated, but because of the circumstances of what has been going on in the world, they saw the drop off. But of the 6,000, most of them went to Poland, and then a large number of them, I would imagine, went on to Israel, but not as many as normal. So we're going to begin with the first week of the 2 weeks that we were there. The first week is spent in Poland, and here you can see that Bonnie is just the day before beginning her walk into Auschwitz. When we were in Auschwitz, our tour guide was able to remind us of what the extent of the extermination was. He was a very wonderful tour guide, Tomasz, and we had the opportunity to do as what many people do, to tour the area and to see, of course, the slippers, the shoes that were left behind, mounds and mounds of them, as well as the suitcases. We saw the area where the crematoriums were, as I'm sure those of you who have been to Auschwitz
It won't let me.
have already seen. And Bonnie, tell us about this.
This was the registration building, so that when they got off the trains and they were going to be working at Auschwitz, they entered this building, their clothes were taken off, and they were given the striped clothing that we usually see. Their head was shaved. And if any of you have seen the Tattooist of Auschwitz, this was where they did the tattooing.
Now you can see that this is in Birkenau. This is not in Auschwitz. This is where the March of the Living concluded. March of the Living was specifically chosen as the name of this experience in order to contrast it with the death marches that were the conclusion of the Holocaust. And when we were there the day before, because Auschwitz was not going to be open for tourists the day of the march, because of the number of people there, they closed up the museums. And so that's why we went the day before. And in this particular courtyard where you see us, we are at a spot where thousands of Jews were shot to death. And we, as a group, there were about 40 of us, we thought to stop and to recite the Martyrs' Kaddish for them.
In another room, Yad Vashem has taken over the whole space, and these are the names of all the people that are registered at Yad Vashem. It is done alphabetically, and you can look through these lists and you see me, it's coming up. You see me looking at one of the areas, and I looked to see, my mother's maiden name was Komunetsky, and I looked to see if her name was there, and I couldn't find it, but there are so many other Komunetskis that are listed from all over Poland. And so there were a lot, whether they were part of her extended family or not, I don't have an answer to that. And then we also looked up David's Vorspan family, which was spelled Vorspan with an F, because we don't know any immediate family that was murdered in the Holocaust from the Vorspans. But here they're listed. His immediate family came from Warsaw. And I don't know whether you can see that these names are from all over Poland. So, and we always thought that it was a small family and that every Vorspan or Vorspan was related, which it still could be, but there are more than the immediate family that we know about, and they are all over Poland. So that opens up a whole new door of exploration, of which I'm not sure we can even find how we're connected.
So now we have the day of the march itself. We began by wearing our attire. That included the special jackets and T-shirts that they gave all of the marchers, depending upon the delegation, determined what the color was of the T-shirt that you were going to wear. And of course, we took the obligatory group shot in the parking lot before we would begin the march itself. This is the parking lot of Auschwitz. And if you look here, you can see the delegation of youth that came from Los Angeles, from the Bureau of the Builders of Jewish Education. And these are primarily kids from D. Toledo High School and from Milken. They always have sent large delegations, especially D. Toledo. The first year that they began sending kids was the fourth year of the school in 2006. And the kids who were going to graduate, 4 of them decided they wanted to go on the March of the Living. And when they came back, they spoke so highly of the experience that subsequent years, almost every single year, about 60 to 70 to 80% of the senior class all went on the March of the Living, not part of the school program, but because they felt it was so important for them to be a part of this. And those of you who can see, perhaps in the upper left portion, that's Mark Spall, who is the head of D Toledo now.
And by the way, if any of you have any questions as we're going along, don't hesitate to ask, so that we can clarify anything.
If you we can see you on a different screen. So if you kind of wave, we'll be able to see that you're trying to get our attention. The delegation that we participated in was of the Holocaust Museum of Los Angeles, of which Bonnie's become quite involved. And in fact, she has put together a PowerPoint presentation of her own, which she now goes to different secular and religious schools, mostly non-Jewish schools, and shares thoughts about her mother, Simi Meshel. And you can see that Charles Meshel, her brother, Bonnie's brother, is also here. And we've shown this presentation to our family already, but we'll also show it to the shul. Once we got there, and we were all set to do the march. So now we're in Auschwitz, but we had to wait. We had to wait for everybody to arrive. We got there hours in advance. And so we waited for all the rest of the delegations to show up, and we waited and we waited. Hour after hour, we waited. Chabad had the opportunity to come and to put tefillin on people who were interested, and we continued to wait until finally the alarm went off that said we now can go. This is the shofar. And what he said was, the march begins. And we begin. So we marched primarily as delegations representing either teens or adults. And since we were with the adults, it turns out that our delegation was the very last group of adults in line. And then after us were all the teens. And here were the teens chafing at the bit, waiting for us to walk by them so they could begin their march. This is what it looks like when you begin to exit the area of Auschwitz on the way to Birkenau, a 3-kilometer walk. And here we are leaving Auschwitz,
Right, Mark,
our delegation.
Yeah.
And we took the perfunctory picture of our group.
And I learned something new as we were standing there, and I don't know if anybody else knows this information, but if you look at the sign, Arbeit macht frei, work will make you free, there is one letter that is actually upside down. And it was purposely done by the person who created it, sort of a stick to the Nazis. Does anybody see what letter they think? Judy? Oh, you're muted.
But we saw you say the letter.
It's the B.
It's the B. And if you look at the B, the bottom should be the fatter part of the B. And I don't know how recently that sign was stolen, and they had it redone exactly as it was originally put up there.
It was stolen by some young people who decided that would be a good souvenir to have. In the middle of the night, they cut it down. They were in a little sports car. So what they had to do was fold it into thirds and jam it into the trunk of the car. Eventually, they were caught, and the sign was released and redeemed. But because it had been folded in thirds, it no longer was salvageable. And so this is a copy of the original sign. Here are other groups who are ready to march. The sign says all of the hostages should be returned immediately.
One thing that was very amazing to me was that these youth groups from Israel had such spirit. You can see that they're almost all of them are wearing an Israeli flag over their shoulders, and they did not stop singing. They sang the whole way, and it was to me, it was, and I'm going to use a word that I'm going to share with you later also, they were resilient. Israel is resilient. Jews are resilient. We will survive. So even marching here where we did, these youth, it was just phenomenal, the spirit that they had, and the whole way they were singing.
And in fact, our delegation of adults was the very last delegation, followed by all the teen delegations. And you can see here's Bonnie at the very end of the line, and behind us is one of the Israeli delegations. But they caught up with us eventually, but their spirit was infectious.
Did we talk about the protesters?
No,
Okay.
let's not give them any more.
Okay. Okay.
But there were 5 protesters that got a bit of publicity, unfortunately. As you'll see here, the walk between Auschwitz and Birkenau is 3 kilometers. You can see the fence on the right is where Auschwitz was, and to the left is the rest of the town. After 3 kilometers, not a long walk, we end up in Birkenau, which is where the crematoriums were. They were not in Auschwitz. And we took our picture there as well. And then we went inside the area where you can see the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
Horrible.
And one of the things that you see now are these placards that people put in the ground along the railroad tracks. They're supposed to represent tombstones. And here you're going to see Bonnie put her placards down. And this is what they say.
So David wrote one for the Vorspans family, and I wrote my grandfather couple, my grandmother Bubble, my mother's next oldest brother Mesha, and then Shlomi, and Yudel, and the baby sister, the youngest sister, Rosie.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
can everybody mute? That way we don't have the interference, and then unmute when we can ask questions. Is that all right?
that's a good idea. So everybody go ahead if you know how to do it to mute, but don't forget to wave vigorously if you wanted to ask any or say anything. We then had the program itself.
Wait, I'm gonna say stood.
What do I say? Go ahead.
Oh, where we put these little tombstones were the train tracks that my mother and her family came in on after spending 3 days in a cattle car with about 120 other people from the ghetto of Pruzhina, where they had lived for 2 years. My mother was 20 years old. And one day recently, I was driving in the car and I realized that our oldest grandchildren are 20 years old. And I have to tell you, the thought of my mother being their age or they being there was just, it was horrific. But I stood where my mother got out of the cattle car, and I stood where her mother so bravely went up to, they were going towards the crematorium to be gassed, and realizing that that's what was going to happen, my grandmother Bubble went up to a Nazi guard and said, "My daughter is young and strong, a 20-year-old, and can work for you." And he put her in the live line. And that space, my mother watched her mother go, and her youngest brother Yudel and her little sister Rosie go off to their death. And she said that when she turned around, her little brother was crying. And it to me, it's unbelievable when I think about that she was 20 years old and she lived through this. She She lived through 2 years of being in Auschwitz, as did actually her next two brothers and her father for part of that time. And it was, I guess, a very sobering spot to be in and to think about that.
Thank you, Bonnie. After we did the march to Birkenau, we then had a program. And the program began with, and by the way, we had influencers from TikTok. And it seems that the first year that they invited influencers was last year because they were able to influence a lot of young people to come on the march. And so they did it again this year. And that's what this group who were sitting next to us represented. These are from TikTok influencers from Israel. We began the program with Hatikva. And then the next few days, we had an opportunity to visit a few other sites. We're not going to go to all of the sites that we visited in Poland, but there was something particularly wonderful about visiting the Jewish Community Center of Krakow. Here you can see the facility. There's a synagogue to the left. To the right is the Krakow Jewish Community Center. And there is a plaque you can see on the right side wall. And this is what the plaque says. And you can see that it was, in fact, created. Tell us a little bit about how this came about, Bonnie.
Well, the Prince of Wales at that time, Prince Charles, came and he found out about what they were trying to do. And he donated his own money to help build the Krakow Jewish Community Center, the JCC, around when we were there in 2010. The building was just there and was just starting to take place. But he himself gave money, and also Ronald Lauder from SD Lauder, I believe her son, he also gave money for this. And just something interesting, I don't know how many, first of all, Krakow had 64,000 Jews before World War II living there. Now there are 100 Jews. And today I read something that said 57 of them are Holocaust survivors. The JCC has 800 members. People from all over the world are sponsoring it. Non-Jews are sponsoring it. This year, when the Ukraine situation happened, they took part in housing Ukrainians that came across the border, giving them food, giving them a place to live. They do a lot of tzedakah, and they are trying to educate about Judaism. Jonathan, who is the CEO, is from America. He sort of made Aliyah there. He's an amazing person. He met his wife there. She did not know that she had a Jewish father. And through and Ronald Lauder also created a JCC in Budapest, which also helps the people. After World War II, nobody wanted to be Jewish anymore. It wasn't a safe thing to do. And they stopped doing Jewish things if they survived, and they didn't teach their future generations. So they have generations that don't know that they have a Jewish heritage. Jonathan's wife didn't know her father was Jewish. They met. She learned about it. She found out her father was Jewish. She converted to Judaism, and they now have a 2-year-old in a nursery school. This is the first nursery school since the war that is taking place now at the Krakow JCC. They are full of spirit. And Jonathan was, and I really loved this. He said, don't be sad for us. There's plenty of sadness, but don't be sad for us. Know that we are resilient. We are resilient here. We are rebuilding. He travels all over the world talking about Krakow and all of the things that they're doing. And to me, that resilience is one of the most important things that I have from this trip, that both in Poland and in Israel, is that we are resilient as Jews. There's a picture of Jonathan, and the spirit, he was just amazing.
We then had an opportunity to go to the Warsaw Jewish Cemetery, and I'm glad that my sister is online because our family, many of them were buried in the Warsaw Jewish Cemetery.
This is a map of the cemetery. It is huge. It is gigantic. And all of those numbers represent the section. There are no numbers anywhere. You can't find, if you walk around, you don't know where you're going. And so we were able to, through digitization around 2012, they began taking pictures of the Jewish cemeteries and writing down all the information that is on the tombstones. And they gave the section that it's in, they gave the row that the tombstone is in, and they gave the number. You can see a chalk mark. It's not on the actual tombstone, but there's a chalk mark there. And they've translated the information. And so we found that David's great-grandfather, his grandpa Ben's father, is Chaim. And we know that he died around, it's dated here, 1914. His wife, Rachel, after whom, Rachel, you are named after Grandpa Ben's mother, Rachel, who died in 1905. And there is her tombstone.
So Rachel, you have the tombstone in Warsaw Cemetery that says Rachel Vorspans. But here is the one that is particularly interesting for us, because this is, Rachel, our great-great-grandfather. And when we got to the cemetery, we saw, and this is a close-up of his tombstone, and this is what we went to find.
And we were able to find it because I had sent...
Well, wait, before we get there.
Oh, okay.
So here we have the cemetery itself. It's on a street in Warsaw. You can see across the street from the cemetery is just a apartment building. This is the entrance to the cemetery, and then this is the cemetery. And you can see how it's in a state of some disrepair. You got tombstones that have toppled. And so we needed to figure out, how do we find our great-great-grandfather's tombstone?
So before we went on the march, I asked an educator, Michael Morgenstern, from the Holocaust Museum of Los Angeles, knowing that we were going to go to the Warsaw Cemetery, I have this information. Would there be somebody that could help us find these tombstones? He said, I'll do the best that I can. We hear nothing else. We get there the day before, and I ask Tomasz, who is our guide, I said, do you know anything about finding any of our tombstones? And they were located all over. If you remember on the map, they were not in one section. In fact, husbands and wives were not buried next to each other. I believe that they were buried when they died where there was an opening. They didn't pre-order the space. So Tomasz said, I've given the information to the CEO of the Warsaw Jewish Cemetery, and tomorrow morning he will be there to guide us to one of them. And he was, and he came, and of course he knew exactly where it was and led us to that tombstone, which we saw more information on it than the photograph that we had of it.
And so overcome was I that I wanted to take this opportunity to at least recite the El Male.
El Male Rachamim, Shotein Bamrumim. El Male Rachamim,
Hang on a second.
Shotein Bamrumim.
You can hear it, but I want you to be able to see it.
You can't see it? What do you mean?
Look at that. That's what they say.
Oh. Well, wait.
El Male Rachamim.
Do you have to? You need
Yep.
to, technical difficulty. Because there's a picture of David actually chanting.
Okay, so hopefully you can hear this at least.
הקדושים וטהורים כטוהר רקיע מסעירים, את נשמת אליעזר בן דוד יהודה שהלך לעולמו, בעבור שנדבו צדקה בצד הצקרת נשמתו, גן עדן מנוחתו, לכן בעל הרחמים הסתירי בסתר כנפך לעולמים, מצרור וצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו. ינוח לשלום את משכבו, ונאמר
And I want to tell you that we were 38 people in the delegation. All of them stood around us. All of them took pictures and took videos and sent it to us. And afterwards, that you heard me sniffing, I was crying there. Afterwards, they said, thank you for letting us be a part of your family today. And it was just up there. It
Here, you
is.
get to see it again.
הקדושים וטהורים כטוהר רקיע מסעירים, את נשמת אליעזר בן דוד יהודה שהלך לעולמו, בעבור שנדבו צדקה בצד הצקרת נשמתו, גן עדן מנוחתו, לכן בעל הרחמים הסתירי בסתר כנפך לעולמים, מצרור וצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו. ינוח לשלום את משכבו, ונאמר
I also want to tell you that in David's family, they didn't know a lot about the generations before, and we found Chaim and Rachel's tombstones, and on the tombstones it said son or daughter of, and it gave a name. So Chaim's father was Eliezer. And on Eliezer's tombstone, his father's name was David Yehuda. So we were able to then go back to other generations. And also, if it was a wife, it listed her husband's name. So we were able to find the spouses. It's amazing what these tombstones held and what they wrote about. So that it was amazing that we were able to find out this information.
We went to a few concentration camps, but one that we had a particularly remarkable, where we had a remarkable experience was at Medonik. And that was because there is a display here of the
ashes of the Jews that were murdered is in that building. And they are trying to figure out how to best finish it off. But that is filled with the ashes that were the people who were murdered there and burned.
So there was a crematorium in it, and we came upon some kids who were in that room, and they were doing something incredible in the face of the death of this concentration camp. And when we finished our week in Poland, we then went to Israel. And as you probably have already seen from other people who've gone to Israel, as soon as you land and you walk to the terminal, you see the pictures of the hostages. And within a couple of days of our being there, we went to the hotel for Friday night for services and just to see what was going on, what the spirit was like in Israel. And this is what we found. The first thing that Bonnie and I wanted to do in Israel in front of the wall was to bless our children. No matter where we go, we bring pictures of the kids with us and we point at the picture and we bless them. But in this particular case, we got very, very overwhelmed by the whole experience. Listen.
Yitzimei Elohim ki Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Yitzimka Elohim ki Ephraim, Menashe. Yeah, Adonai panav elecha v'yichudeka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yichudeka.
Well, at least one of us got the words out. This is the spirit of Israel. People were asking me, and I was wondering myself, in a time of war and with hostages still imprisoned, what was the mood in Israel? Well, this gives you a little bit of a taste of the mood. I'm going to stop the share for just a moment because I want to optimize this. And now let's try this again. All right. We then continue to see the joy of the And when we went to the main street of Jerusalem, the Midrachov, we discovered a Korean group that loves Israel and we're singing songs. But if you look at the end of this little clip, you will see how many tourists were in Israel with us. And because there were so few tourists, wherever we went, we were greeted so enthusiastically, and people thanked us for being there.
And something that I learned, especially from the student groups, the Israeli groups that were singing, is Am Yisrael Chai. That was a phrase that they used over and over again when they were singing, when they had a speech or they spoke about anything. They started it with Am Yisrael Chai. They ended it with Am Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live. And that to me was the resilience that Jonathan spoke about in Krakow and the resilience that is in Israel now and the resilience of the young people with the hope for a better future right now.
The Gaza envelope is 7 kilometers from the Gaza border. And you can see from this map, the Gaza Strip And the areas that we ended up driving by, we came within a couple of kilometers of Gaza itself, even as this war was going on, but there was never any danger of our being there. The country and the soldiers made sure of that. Wherever we went, there were signs of people who were still hostages, asking that they be freed. And we went to this man's home in Ofakim. In Ofakim, a town of right near the Gaza border, a few miles away, the town of Ofakim has 35,000 residents. But it was here that that Hamas was able to extend itself. I was surprised. I thought Hamas just attacked people right around the Gaza Strip, but they didn't. They went miles north and miles east in order to find Jews. They went into the town of Ofakim, and 50, as alarms rang throughout the town, 50 Jews, 50 Israelis left their homes, and they got their weapons. These are former soldiers, but people who were residents, and they went to find maybe more than 50, but they found the Arab terrorists as they were beginning to infiltrate this town, and they were shot dead. But because of what the Israelis did, these 50 martyrs who died in defending Ofakim, Ofakim was spared, and no more Jews were killed in Ofakim.
And the interesting thing is that this is a religious town, an observant town. And so they didn't do radios, they didn't do television. This happened on Shabbat, on a Saturday morning. And they went to the rabbi, and as they hear alarms sounding, they said to the rabbi, what? And he finally said, turn on your phone, see what's happening. And something very interesting about the gentleman in the blue shirt, this is where he lives with his wife, and I think they have 3 children. And he said that the Palestinians that had worked for them for years, they were housekeepers, they collected the garbage, they became part of their family. When something was difficult in the Palestinian home, they gave them more food. They trusted them. These Palestinians turned out to be spies. They went back to Hamas and they told them each of these homes has a safe room, but the older built homes, the safe room doesn't have a door that locks. The newer ones have doors that lock. These Palestinians told Hamas which homes had safe rooms with doors that locked. They didn't bother going to those homes. They told them which families were not in their homes because of Shabbat. They didn't bother going to those homes. They told them bidiyuk. They told them exactly where the people would be, and that's where they went to attack first. So here were Palestinians that they trusted in Ofakim. They trusted them. They did things for their families and turned around and were the spies.
And of course, the idea of having a door with a lock is, you figured it's not necessary. You have a safe room to keep you safe from bombardments, from rockets attacking, not from people entering your home and trying to get into your rooms. We discovered that as well as we were driving in our bus by one of the bus stops, and it seems that every bus stop in the area of the Gaza envelope has a security shelter, as a bomb shelter, but the bomb shelters didn't have locked doors, and so you wanted to make sure that in the future you could lock people out, but they didn't have it. And in this particular case, some of these bomb shelters now have stuff on the outside to decorate in order to show that there were a lot of people who died in this particular bomb shelter. Many Israelis were killed. It now has become something of a tourist site. This is along the side of the bus stop. And and this is what a group of young people were doing right after they finished touring inside this bus. And when we got there, all of these kids were in the bomb shelter. So we wondered, how big is this bomb shelter that it fit 25 big youth? So I went inside, and this is what I found. It wasn't big at all. And so many people died here. As you drive along the streets of, especially in the area of the Gaza envelope, you see these signs, and the signs tell us that until there is settlement, until you settle the issue that's going on in Gaza, nobody is going to be secure in the south. Bring Elia home now, on the side of one of the bomb
And this
shelters.
bomb shelter is known as the Bird Bomb Shelter.
Now, here is the sign. One sign on the right says, bring them home now. The sign on the left says, you are the head of the government. You are guilty. This is Be'eri. It has been at the site of so much death and carnage from Hamas. It's been closed since October 7th. You can't get into it anymore. And then of course you have the Nova Festival, where 364 young people died. This is a sign that says that this is an area where sometimes rockets are going to land. If you are informed that a rocket is on its way, lie on the ground and cover your head for 10 minutes. It says in Hebrew. And this is what you find when you go into the Nova Festival area. You have these memorials that were created for every single one of the young people who died. Yeah, murdered. This is what it's like to walk through the same area now. It was an overwhelming experience. And then we went to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, where they have exhibits for the hostages who are still enslaved. This is what it looks like from the street level. And then you go inside, and you see all of these exhibits that spontaneously were created. Here is one person's imagining what it must have been like or is like to be in the tunnels in Gaza. And he created this, and you can actually walk through it. Here, let's take a walk through it and listen carefully to the sound effects. Here is a man who was on an 8-day at the time that we took this picture. He was on a hunger strike for 8 days, trying to get the government to do more to release the hostages. And there's a huge tent there where groups can gather to talk through what they're experiencing. Some more of the exhibits. And many of you have probably seen pictures of this, which was a table with a place setting for each of the hostages. And it continues to, as the days go on, more and more you see that the area of the table becomes more decrepit to represent the deterioration of what's going on for the hostages still enslaved. When we were there, of course, in Israel, in Poland, we were there for Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. When you go to Israel, you are going to observe and celebrate 2 holidays. One of them is Yom HaZikaron, which is the memorial day for the soldiers who died in the defense of Israel. The evening of Yom HaZikaron, we found a program that was taking place in Jerusalem and as was taking place throughout the country. It started off with sirens that were heard throughout the country. And it finished with people singing Hatikva. And then the next day is Yom HaZikaron itself. And the place to be is the cemetery where soldiers are primarily buried on Har Herzl. And what is interesting here is that on Yom HaZikaron, not one grave, of which there are hundreds and hundreds, is left unattended. There is a military person standing at the foot of every single grave.
And they passed out flowers that we could put on the tombstones. And there was one woman who was standing next to a tombstone at a gravesite, and our guide said to her, "What is your relationship with this person?" And she said, "I don't have a relationship with this soldier who died, but no one was standing here, and no one should be here alone today. And I'm standing here for this person." It was very moving.
There was a program that was piped to the entire area of Har Herzl.
Something that I found unbelievable was that there are tombstones here from all the different wars, maybe the War of Independence, the 67 War, Yom Kippur War, and there were family members standing there from yesterday, from today. It was immediate. These people, it wasn't just in the history, it was current, and that was a very emotional and moving thought that here they were today standing there.
Sirens went off throughout Israel, including, of course, Har Herzl. at the end of the program, taps, but the Israeli version. And the transition from Yom HaZikaron to Yom HaAtzmaut to Israel Independence Day itself is a transition from sadness to joy. And we were able to observe Israel's Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut, in Jerusalem. And this is what the spirit was like.
Now, if you've ever been to Israel during Yom HaAtzmaut, there are always fireworks and bands are playing in just about every park, and people are in the streets and they're bopping you on the head with hammers, and it is it's huge. And of course there wasn't that, there were no fireworks, there were no
Military
bands
parades.
and military parades. It was somber, but actually the scene that you see right now is just below where our hotel was. And this was one of the programs that was celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut. And they were playing old songs. David and I could actually sing with them because it wasn't just the new Hebrew songs, but songs that we knew the words to. So it was very, very lovely for us to stand and sing and be there with them.
Are in Kikar Muzika celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut, and we're looking for parties to go to because we're just that kind of swinging couple, and it's been very festive compared to the last week and a half that has been pretty much sad. Sadness has explored the Holocaust and the current crisis in the Middle East, but tonight is a chance for everybody just to get out and to try to let it all go and have fun.
This is what they were doing on the streets of Jerusalem, mostly populated by kids with shaving cream.
Those are big cans of shaving cream. They're shooting at everybody.
So, Davey, where are we now?
So we are in the Midrahov. It's getting a little dangerous here because there are a lot of teenagers that are just spritzing each other with shaving cream.
Lots of kids in Israel right now. They have something out there. They're doing it in Tel Aviv.
No, we're in Jerusalem.
Jerusalem, excuse me.
Yeah.
And we found in near the Capitol building of Jerusalem a much larger scale performance. You can see that there are a lot of empty seats, but they valiantly tried to bring some spirit and some joy. That's very noisy.
And again, it was the kids who were out. You can see them here on Ben Yehuda or Yafo, and they are singing and dancing, and a lot of them had, again, Israeli flags on their back, and they were singing, they were celebrating.
And they even got Bonnie. the mood in Israel. It was still celebratory. There was still so much to be thankful for. The very last thing that we ended up with was the concluding program for the March of the Living the night before. It happened to be right near our hotel because it was at the Museum of Tolerance, which was the Jerusalem version of what we have here in Los Angeles. This is the courtyard and this is the program. And you can see that this got a lot of kids, not as big as it would be in previous years, but the kids still carried the joy. And even Bar Mitzvahs at the Wall had its own festivity.
And this took place on a Thursday. So that's why there's the musical instruments. They wouldn't be able to do that on Shabbat. But that was the reading of the Torah on a Thursday and the festivities there.
So our week came to an end in Israel. So we were gone for 2 weeks. On the way to the airport, of course, we were reminded of previous wars that took place in Israel. And when we got to the airport on the way to our plane, we were reminded that hostages are still enslaved. But maybe next year there will be peace in Jerusalem. And that is our presentation.
Anybody have any questions or comments? I was carrying tissues with me all the time. It was emotional. And Judy.
So you use the term the Gaza envelope.
Yes.
And I've heard that, but can you tell me exactly what that means?
The Gaza envelope is actually predated the whole Gaza experience of recent. It goes back many years, but that is the area within about 7 kilometers of the Gaza border. There are about 40 or 50 settlements in that area, and that's just referred to as the Gaza envelope.
Thank you.
We also had the opportunity. Oh, Stan, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention that many of you know that I was on the March of the Living in 2006 with an adult group from the March of the Living itself. They were adults from all over the English-speaking Jewish world. And as Bonnie and David said, you cannot describe this experience, the emotion, and I didn't have any specific relatives that I were looking for. So this, I'm sure, made it for you even more emotional. But 4 years before that, Phyllis and I went on an elder hostel called In the Footsteps of European Jews. It was Budapest, Prague, Warsaw, and Krakow. And we went to just about all those places that you mentioned. And but for you two, I guess the next thing is next year to take everybody in your family who hasn't been on the March of the Living with you. So, but
Something to strive for, yes.
And thank you so much. And I'm sure there'll be many people that'll want to watch this. It was a great job.
Thank you, Stan. That's very sweet.
We were,
Let's get some,
yes,
Marla.
yes.
I just want to thank you so much. I was crying and so moved by everything you showed us tonight. And thank you so much for sharing it with everyone.
Thank you. I was glad that you were part of it. Janet.
It's a J. Just thank you so much for sharing it. We've heard so much about it, and I have to tell you, our granddaughter, when she was at the crematorium area where that group, they were singing as well, and her thought on it was, we are bringing light to these souls, and that was just her way of dealing with it. And I don't know if you know, one of our other granddaughters, very dear friends, is a hostage. And so I kept looking for the pictures, of Omer, but he wasn't there. But thank you so much for putting your world with us and sharing it.
Thank you, Janet. Fran.
Thank you. As everyone has said, I have been in Israel a few times, and I have in Poland, and I have heard of the March of the Living. And my thought of it was a lot different than the reality. So thank you for presenting it. It was terrific.
Thank you. If anybody is interested in going next year on the March of the Living, let us know and we can give you more information. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say,
Art.
Well, I'm repeating what everybody said, but I really appreciate the, sort of first person, discovery that you shared with us. And I thank you both sincerely for it. It was really a worthwhile spending of time for all of us.
Thank you, Art. Thank you for that. Bonnie?
I just wanted to say that we ended up with one extra day because our plane arrangements changed. And we were able to contact, we contacted one friend who was the best man at our wedding, Howie, and his wife, who made Aliyah to Israel quite a few years ago. They have 4 children that were born there, and all of them are married. And they have they have 2 boys and 2 girls, so they have an equal number of men and women, and some of the men are in the reserves and are going to Gaza. And Howie and Kayla were telling us that they help out looking after the grandchildren because a spouse is gone and the other spouse has to go to work. And they never mention where the parent is going. He has a meeting. Whether or not the kids know really what's going on or how old they are that they would know. And Howie and Kayla they were very hesitant to even talk to us about it. That's how emotional it is for them. They live in Jerusalem, and then there was another friend who we happened to meet in Tel Aviv, who then came to Jerusalem, where she has another office where she works, and we had a chance to be with her. She has also made Aliyah. She has 4 children. Only one of them is married. They live in Tel Aviv. And she did not hesitate to tell us how angry she is with the government and with everybody. But nobody had a solution, I don't think. They're all grasping. They all want it to be done and for people to be okay. So it was so different to have a couple who really, it was hard for them to talk about it. And Amy was just very vocal about how she wants, it needs to be done. It needs to be taken care of. And right now, our grandson, Gavi, is in Tel Aviv. He went on Birthright. I mentioned this, I think, last Shabbat. And after Birthright, which is 10 days long, they have a program called Onward. And Gavi is on that program. You intern somewhere. And he happens to be interning for an ice hockey team, the Ashdod Dolphins. And he's having an amazing time trying to, I don't know whether he's tried to use his sports analytics in analyzing the way they're playing, but he's trying to use media to advertise. They're on Instagram now, and he posts them on Facebook, and trying to get more people to know about the ice hockey. There, I believe, are 4 teams in Israel, and so they play each other in Ashdod. And And it's been an amazing time for him to be there still now and feeling totally safe. They, of course, also would not let the students go anywhere that they shouldn't go. But he's having an amazing time there now. So we feel very blessed with all of our experience. And as difficult, and as I mentioned, I was carrying tissues with me all the time. I was crying a lot, but it was an overwhelmingly, I don't know whether positive is the right word, but resilient. I come back to resilient, both with the Jews in Poland and with the Jews in Israel. And Am Yisrael Chai, I really feel that has to be something that we all say, and we believe it, and we carry it forward, because the people of Israel live. We are also those people of Israel. So it was a very emotional and amazing trip at the same time, really something that will stay with us for a long time.
Thank you all for being a part of this. Stan.
There's one other thing. You mentioned how ironic, of course, it was for that community that had close enough to the Palestinian border that they knew the families, and those were some of the people that actually spied and gave them information, gave Hamas and helped them out. There's also a number of the communities very near the border were kibbutz and some secular kibbutz, and they didn't necessarily know all these people on the Gaza side, of course, but they were one of these groups that would go near the border and throw up balloons or welcoming the Gaza residents, because they were the peaceniks, if you want to call them that. The same day was October 7th.
Thank you, Stan. We have services this coming Shabbat. Helga Unclis is turning 93 on Saturday. And so if you're there, we'll all have an opportunity to wish her a happy birthday. Her daughter is coming in, especially Kathy, and she's going to be providing something very special that is going to be a surprise for everybody. So thank you all for being with us. Stan, last thought?
I was going to mention it's also, we're celebrating July birthdays and anniversaries, and Phyllis's 85th birthday is in July. So we'll be celebrating her birthday with a special celebration for all the people there, birthdays.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Stan. I wish everybody Fran, yes.
Speaking of July, I will be 80 in a few weeks, and I can't believe, when did this happen? It's like in the blink of an eye.
Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you. Am Yisrael Chai. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Thank you for being part of this.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful day.
For being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.